I'm wondering if part of this has to do with the relationship he has off the field, knowing that there's some morality issues involved in his relationship. Welcome to episode 269 of Empty the Bench here on the Empty the Bench podcast network presented by Playback. He's Anthony Balester. I'm Nick Morgasen. Follow us on social media for Empty the Bench at ETB Sports, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at ETB Sports. Follow the Empty the Bench podcast network at ETB Network, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Follow our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ETB Network. Very close to 1,000 subscribers. Please help us. It helps us grow the channel, the network, and helps us do a lot of things. And if you can't watch on the video side, listen to Empty the Bench wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, iHeart, Acast, YouTube Premium. We're available on all platforms. And something we've had for about a little over a month now, check us out on Substack. etbnetwork.substack.com. You and I, Anthony, do alley-oop analytics for the NBA. We have Baseball Bonanza with our Hitting for the Cycle crew, Noteworthy in the NCAA, Will Charlton, and a whole heck of a lot of other things. We have a lot of gambling on there. It's $5 a month or $60 for the year. So please go sign up and unlock a bunch of content that all our hosts do behind the scenes as well. And Empty the Bench is presented by Playback. Stay tuned for later on in the show to find out more about what we're doing on Playback, whether it's NBA streams or everything else that we have going on as well. All right. A lot of headlines this week. I would say last show was a little tame for the first time in a long time, right, Anthony?
Oh, yeah, definitely made up for it this week. I mean, we're getting just on the cusp of NFL free agency. So that's why we're seeing this influx of NFL news. We're also getting that coupled with right in the middle of the mid-season NBA. So we got the mixture of all that and plenty more. So I can't wait to break it all down.
Yeah, so NFL, this is the weird thing. You would think the time of the calendar, right now, we just finished the NFL season. You would think everything would be a little bit quiet on the NFL front. It's been very loud on the NFL front. A lot of news, a lot of moves, a big cut from the Jets, which we'll get into, which between you and I, well, and everybody else listening, I'm kind of happy they did it because it freed up a bunch of cap space, but we'll get to that. A big trade went down, which, in my opinion, actually helps the Commanders in a big way. I didn't really understand it from the 49ers perspective, but we'll get into that. Big headline involving Bill Belichick and UNC and Hard Knocks, which was kind of a head scratcher to me to begin with, that they were choosing UNC because no other NFL team wanted to be on the offseason edition of Hard Knocks. But you could probably thank the New York Giants for the reason why any NFL team doesn't want to be on it. We'll go back to around the NBA. There's a lot of NBA headlines that make me want to smash my head against a desk, including two big-time players done for the year, including some others. And actually, we'll get to college basketball this week, finally, because we're about, 2 weeks away from Selection Sunday from as of this recording. So we'll get into that. And with baseball back, there's a certain major headline that could be coming, and it's controversial and kind of unfortunate. And the person himself called the news before he passed away. So we'll get into all that. And if we have some time, we'll do some UFC at the end. But let's get going. This is the major headline right now via CBS Sports. Now, just want to make everybody well aware and clear. CBS Sports was the one who broke the story. They got the headline first. Bill Belichick and UNC will not be featured on the off-season edition of Hard Knocks, which is done between HBO and NFL Films. And this was kind of a shock. I think, Anthony, originally it was a shock that they chose UNC, that they chose the Tar Heels. And, well, it's not a surprise that they chose Bill Belichick because Bill Belichick's an interesting character to watch. But this deal was done. Like, there was a stamp on it. We were all preparing for Bill Belichick and getting to see him behind the scenes. And then all of a sudden, the deal falls apart, right?
Yeah, I'm absolutely shocked. Like you said, Nick, I thought it was a done deal. I was already getting ready to get my popcorn ready and watch this thing. But I guess we're not going to be able to see it after all. So that's definitely a shock. I want to know what ultimately led to this not becoming a done deal. I wonder if last minute, if there was just a dollar figure or a number that these two parties just couldn't agree on. And it's unfortunate because it doesn't seem like any NFL team wants to do it. So I wonder if what Hard Knocks' next move is going to be. Are they going to pivot to try to go to another college team? Because obviously Belichick was the marquee person everybody would want to see being his first season in college. And obviously I don't think there's not going to be a lot of other big-time marquee college coaches that are going to want to do it. So I'm interested to see.
I'll give you one, and it's kind of the obvious if you think about it, but Colorado. I don't know if they're as interesting anymore with Shedeur Sanders going to the NFL and Travis Hunter going to the NFL. But can you imagine, like, if following Dion around with Hard Knocks in the offseason?
I think that would be interesting. I know Dion, I think may has like an Amazon Prime show as well that follows him a little bit. But yeah, I think that would be the perfect fit. Even without his son Shedeur and Travis Hunter, Deion Sanders is still prime time, and he's still a guy you're going to want to see. And they got a lot of exciting players, including one of the star freshmen coming in, Juju Lewis, that everybody wants to see. So I think that would be something that a lot of people would want to watch. And maybe outside North Carolina, Belichick, maybe Colorado would get the most views. If not, get even more views than what North Carolina would have got in the first place.
Now, I'll throw another idea at you. It'll never happen. This goes on the board of it would be amazing if they could somehow do it, but the NFL and the powers that be would never allow it. How about a Hard Knocks off season following around Roger Goodell?
That'd be awesome. I would love to see like inside the life of Roger Goodell and like what it's like to be the NFL commissioner and what like the day-to-day operations is like that.
I just don't think it would ever be allowed because the NFL powers that be don't want their business out, and the trade secrets, as they call it, they wouldn't want them out. But you know how many freaking eyeballs they would have on Hard Knocks if they were following around Commissioner Goodell for an off-season show. It would probably be HBO would break records, I think, if that happened, right?
Oh, I would love to see it. I mean, I'd pick that over Dion or Belichick.
If I'll tell you right now, if that would ever happen, I would almost do like we had a show on the UFC side following the Ultimate Fighter for our MMA Outsiders host. They did it on the side to follow the matchups every week and eventually the main fight. We did it for a few seasons. I would have done a post-show recap show of that if that ever came to be, because that would be fascinating to watch every week. But let's get into the actual language, because I have the story and what they claim the reasons are. And the reason I say what they claim is because I don't know if I believe them 100%. So NFL Films had discussions with Coach Belichick and UNC about appearing on Hard Knocks this offseason, but couldn't reach an agreement. So that's sentence number one. Now, that could be a whole host of things. That could be money. That could be creative control. Because like I said, what happened with the Giants? No NFL team now wants to be showing or airing their dirty laundry anymore. But it does say sources say creative control was at the center of the sides being unable to reach an agreement. So that's probably Belichick saying, the Giants got screwed. I don't want to be in that same spot.
Yeah, but what makes that interesting is, and the whole reason why I said in the beginning why North Carolina and Belichick was a great fit was because what kind of controversy and what do you really have to be private about? I mean, there's not going to be any really free agency to talk about. There's going to be no draft. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's just going to be the young players who are already on the team practicing. Maybe they'll bring in a transfer here and there when the season starts, but ultimately, it's just going to be these young guys practicing, trying to get better, and Bill Belichick trying to put this roster together. So I don't know what the creative control issue could have been, because I feel like there's probably nothing that you really have to hide.
I think it has to do more with like I said, what happened to the Giants, and Belichick knows this from being in the NFL. Hey, I don't want dirty laundry or something getting misconstrued while being on the job. So we need to have some creative control over the narrative, because that's the big word in the NFL. And basically, it sounds like HBO and NFL Films were just like, we're not giving you full creative control. It's not your show. You're featured on the show, but it's not your show. We have to show what's going on in the locker rooms.
Well, let me ask you, Nick. Who do you think needs the other one more? Does Hard Knocks need Belichick, or does Belichick need Hard Knocks more?
That's a really good question. Like, because I could debate that on both sides of it. In my opinion, and this might sound a little ignorant, but I actually think Belichick needs Hard Knocks. Actually, because Belichick, what's the ultimate goal for Bill Belichick? He wants to get back to the NFL and coach. He took this job because he didn't have a desirable job at the NFL level. It wasn't there. Well, I'm trying to think of any teams we're discussing, but I think Atlanta, technically by report, was the only one that came out and technically had discussions with him, right?
Yeah.
So his desire is to get back to the NFL. Who runs Hard Knocks? NFL and NFL Films, which means every NFL executive, every NFL owner watches Hard Knocks. So there's a motive. As much as Bill and UNC want to say, well, we couldn't get the desired agreement, it's not that. It's that it doesn't make me look good, so then I won't be able to get back to the NFL, and I won't be able to have that quality image, even though that's laughable because Bill doesn't have a quality image. Just look at his relationship off the field. But to answer your question, I think Belichick needs Hard Knocks. What do you think?
Yeah, that's definitely a great point. I would definitely have to go on the opposite end of that. I think Hard Knocks needs Belichick more. I mean, I think at the end of the day, yeah, it will be a good image, but his success and what's going to turn into wins and W's and success in college, that's what's going to get him back to the NFL. It's not going to be necessarily what he looks or what the image is going to be on Hard Knocks. It's going to be, hey, can he go to college? Can he turn that program into a winning program? And can he prove, hey, can he still be a successful coach at his age? Then I think at that point he does get an NFL job. Where if you look at Hard Knocks, basically almost every NFL team has rejected him. So you got the next best thing outside of an NFL team is Belichick in his first year in college. And now basically that's going to fall through the cracks. So at this point, you're running out of options. So I think they're starting to become desperate. And I feel like right now Hard Knocks needs Belichick more.
I'm wondering if, and again, this is all allegedly because I have no idea what the reasons are. And I'm sure we'll find out later on. But I'm wondering if part of this has to do with the relationship he has off the field, knowing that there's some morality issues involved in his relationship. And I'm wondering if he said to HBO and NFL Films, which he's worked with in the past for what's the show that he was doing on TV for the NFL on the CW. They had I can't remember the name of the show. Yeah, he did Inside the NFL. I think that was with NFL Films and HBO. They were partnered in that. So he's worked with them before. But I think he was trying to control that he's not being chased 24/7, walking around with a girlfriend who's 50 years younger than he is.
So do you think his girlfriend's just going to be in there occasionally, like, in his office when he's doing game plans, and they're like, yeah, don't put that on the show or anything, and they're like, hey, we want to get the whole Bill Belichick life. So
Right.
that would be that's a pretty interesting point. They're going to make sense. Maybe they didn't want his girlfriend involved.
So, and they probably said, well, okay, then what's the value of being in the locker room or being in his office if we're not going to see the full Bill Belichick experience that's really involved to watch Hard Knocks? That's why it's called Hard Knocks, because you're literally getting the full experience that goes on behind the scenes. Now, I do think teams have some control because, one, they agree to be on the show, but they're not going to take advantage of these teams if something bad is going on behind the scenes or if there's a private issue. It still has to be run through quality control, but those cameras catch everything. It's doing a reality show, so to speak. Actually, I would almost call Hard Knocks a reality show, right?
Oh yeah, it's basically an NFL reality show.
But it's more real than any other reality show because they're not editing the footage to make it look any different for the most part than it actually is. So I believe that there's something smells in this situation, but I'm sure we'll find out more. All right, let's move on into the NFL offseasons. The first couple moves on the board. This shocked everybody. This one shocked me. Now, Deebo wanted out of the 49ers because I think he just knew he didn't fit in there anymore. But I actually think he was one of the more valuable pieces that they had. He could run the ball. He could catch passes. And their quarterback situation is up in the air right now because they have to figure out what they're going to pay Brock and that whole scenario. But this shocked me. What was your first initial reaction when you saw Deebo to the Commanders?
Well, obviously, we've been talking about for weeks for Deebo Samuel and trade talks. So the trade for Deebo wasn't shocking, but to the team, it definitely was. For the Commanders, this is a great trade. I mean,
Yes.
You already have a number one of the best receivers in football in Terry McLaurin, but you really didn't have an established star on the opposite side to take the pressure off him. Now you get a guy like Deebo Samuel who's so versatile and is such a chess piece. Now you have two number one wide receivers, and in my opinion, one of the best duos in the NFL with Jaden Daniels. So that's going to be an unbelievable offense. And now if they can somehow figure out a way to build up their defense, this team is going to be scary. For the 49ers, when we first mentioned about them trading Deebo, the only reason why I thought about it was, when you look at all the receivers, he was one of the older receivers they have. I think he will be 29 years old this year. He does make a decent amount of money. Brandon Ayuk just got a new contract, but he's decently younger. He's only 25, 26. You got young guys like Juwan Jennings. You got Ricky Purcell. So I wonder if they're deciding like, hey, we're just going to go young and cheaper at the wide receiver position. I've also heard rumors that even Ayuk may potentially be traded. Now, I'm not sure if they're going to go full out and trade both. I think that would be a mistake. I don't know if this roster could afford to lose both those guys. But I think they can afford to lose one of them with Ricky Purcell coming into his own next year in his second year. And you got guys like Juwan Jennings. And like you said, you got some other guys like, Brock Purdy coming up for a deal. And I wonder if this is ultimately to clear up space to end up signing Brock Purdy to a deal. But it seems like this is going to be a new era for the 49ers, and they're going a little younger.
Now, the Brock situation, I think, is the biggest domino of this offseason that they really got to figure out because he's got to be paid. Like, even though like he was Mr. Irrelevant and that was the whole thing, he played well enough to earn a deal. Now, I'm not talking about like some of these guys who got 40, 50, 60 million. I think you still got to pay him 25, 30 million a year. Like he's earned a contract. We can't deny that. The guy, like I said, went from Mr. Irrelevant to making the playoffs and making a run. So they got to pay him. But I think this was on the checklist for money they needed to save so that they could do better roster construction in the offseason to figure out, okay, I got a wide receiver for a little bit cheaper on my roster, and we need to get rid of Deebo. But Deebo was a leader on this team too. That's what kind of puzzled me a little bit with this move. But like you said, they have Jennings. Now, I don't know if I trust Ayuk 100% anymore. Between the horrible injury, like the really bad injury, what was that? A torn ACL, I think. And that for a receiver, that's like the worst injury you could possibly have. And I just don't like his attitude. Number two either. I don't think he really wanted to be there at all. We saw the Instagram stories that were all blacked out, and I think it was his wife also who put out the Instagram story basically trashing Levi Stadium, or not Levi Stadium. I don't know what's the name of the stadium now, the new one that they're in. But it just was not a good situation. It was like a bad taste in each other's mouths between the team and him. So I think they're going to rely on Jennings. They got to get McCaffrey back healthy. And that's another reason why I don't think this move makes sense. Because Deebo was stepping in sometimes behind McCaffrey and taking carries. So now you're removing that dual threat behind McCaffrey, behind Jennings and Ayuk and all the other guys. You don't have a secondary option backing those guys up anymore.
Yeah, and I think the reason probably why you saw Deebo go is because, like you said, you got Ayuk coming off that devastating injury. Now, he is 25, 26 years old, but he's coming off that devastating injury. His contract's more fairly new, and he might actually be having a higher contract and be making more money than Deebo. So he's probably a harder guy to trade for. With Deebo, it was probably a much easier trade. And like I said, he's the older guy. So it makes more sense to trade the older guy, but they definitely are going to need some O-line as well. And like you said, you got to get McCaffrey back. You got to get some O-line. They probably need some more defensive help. Some of their defensive players are getting a little on the older side. They still haven't established a guy opposite of Nick Bosa. So this team definitely has some issues. And then when you look at the Brock Purdy deal, you said 25 to 30 million. Now, when you look at some of the money that some of these other quarterbacks are getting, I mean, Daniel Jones, just for a playoff win, was able to get I know it wasn't a lot of guaranteed money, but he was able to get 40-something. Geno Smith, after having a Pro Bowl level season, was able to get 40-something. And then you get a guy like Trevor Lawrence, who, has the talent and did get a playoff win. He got, 55 million? You get a guy like Dak Prescott, who's got a couple playoff wins, but never made it to the conference championship. He's making 60. So you're saying 25 to 30 on Brock Purdy. Well, if you're Brock Purdy and Brock Purdy's agent, he could damn well very well be like, hey, why am I not getting paid in the 50s?
It's a good point. By the way, I laugh just because I think the Cowboys are an outlier, in my opinion. But it is laughable that Dak is the highest paid contract on this list for a quarterback right now. And he had an injured season, and he can't perform in the playoffs.
And it's not even close. He's making like $5 million more than the next person.
And who was the one we were just saying? Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is a joke in my book. Like, does he have talent? Yes. But he's never going to win anything in Jacksonville. And that guy's paid $55 million a year for what? And he's been hurt, too, on top of it. So 2 guys who are at the top of that quarterback list. You're right. Brock is probably looking at that and say, wait, I made a conference championship game. Did they make a Super Bowl? I can't remember. So he's got something that those 2 have not done. Think about that. And he's only going to get 25, 30 because he was Mr. Irrelevant. But you're right. Maybe the 25 to 30 is actually undervaluing Brock. But I'm sure the Niners are not going to pay him more than 30 or 35 a year. They're not going to destroy their cap just to keep him. Like, I think they might let him walk before paying him obscene amounts of money.
No, and I definitely agree, Nick. And Brock Purdy, when you compare him to other quarterbacks, I was just saying, that's usually what agents and players use as negotiation tactics, is you always got to compare your accomplishments to other players at your position to determine your value. But for him, it's kind of hard to compare his wins to other quarterbacks because he really did come into a perfect scenario. I mean, he was on a 49ers team that his first 2 years really didn't have any flaws. Pretty much they were always saying like it was just the quarterback that could hold them back. And he didn't hold them back. He got into a conference championship game, then got hurt, and then got them to a Super Bowl and lost in overtime to Mahomes. So when you look at that, but you could say a lot of other quarterbacks, maybe Trevor Lawrence or Jordan Love or Tua or Dak, if you put them in the 49ers in that system, would they have won the Super Bowl? Would they have done more? So Brock Purdy did have the best system around him of any quarterback in the league. But at the end of the day, he accomplished what he accomplished, and he's going to have to get paid one way or another.
Yeah, I would put that under the category of fallacy of a predetermined outcome, obviously, because, like you said, if you put a Dak or you put a Trevor Lawrence in San Francisco, do they win? We have no idea. Well, Dak can't win a clutch game if his life depended on it. So I'd probably say no. Trevor can't stay healthy, and his quality of game has not been great past couple of years. So Brock does fit that system well when they run it the right way. So we'll see what happens on that front. But Brock's got to be paid. And that's why I think this move was partially made. Moving over to my territory of the world. The Jets cut Davante Adams. This is quite literally a salary slash. That's literally what this is. 29.9 million or 30 million to round the number up. They had no choice. They were going to try and trade him, but no one was going to take that money on. That's a lot of money for a wide receiver, $30 million. And someone will pick him up for, I don't know if they'll pick him up for the league minimum. He might be worth more than that, right?
I still think Davante Adams is a great receiver. And I still think he's got a couple good years left in him. But yeah, this seems like this was a mutual thing. He wants to leave. It looks like the Jets are going in kind of to like a rebuild. They're kind of cutting ties with a lot of their older players, and they're kind of having this youth movement. And they're getting rid of Rodgers. They're going to get rid of Davante Adams. Davante Adams is going to allow them to save some money. My question is Davante Adams going to follow Aaron Rodgers again? And whatever team Aaron Rodgers goes to, whether if that's the Giants or the Steelers or whatever, is Davante Adams going to follow him again? Or is he going to say, hey, screw this guy. I'm sick of being in a circus. I'll go do my own thing again.
Well, you know what my answer is going to be to that. They should go their separate ways. Davante could go be I don't know if I would say a number one anymore, but a great number two. I could see him being like a two. And on certain days, step up into a one if they need him to catch some passes. But the Jets, it was a complete disaster. Dumpster fire. And now what saved them in this scenario, no guaranteed money on that money. So they were able to just say, all right, we're going to slash this and get rid of it. Now we have $30 million to work with, whether that's to help with the quarterback situation, whether that's to help with the wide receiver situation. But this just shows you that nothing worked with the Jets this past season. And can you imagine if Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams stay in New York, play in the same stadium, and put on a Giants jersey in the process of it?
I mean, that would be crazy, Nick. I mean, when you look at the roster, I mean, if you take Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams and put him on the Giants with Malik Neighbors, or if you put him on the Steelers with George Pickens on the other side with Mike Tomlin in that defense, I mean, obviously the Steelers would be the best chance of winning. I mean, that team would definitely be a second-round playoff team. If they go to the Giants, I mean, that could definitely be a team that sneaks into the playoffs. They could build up their line to go along with Davante Adams and Rodgers. But, yeah, it's unfortunate for Jets fans because, you know, even as a Bills fan, someone that has a root against the Jets, on paper, it definitely looked like a team that you had to be scared of. And as a Bills fan, I was scared. I'm like, well, you got Rodgers, Adams, Garrett Wilson, and Breece Hall with that defense. How are they not going to be able to compete? But, you know, it all fell apart, and that's what happens when you don't have a leader in the locker room.
Yeah, and it's just one of those scenarios where you're just like, all right, like the Giants don't need this. Like, just rebuild the team. And Chris Canty, who does Unsportsmanlike on the national radio platform every morning, he was saying that if the Giants get Aaron Rodgers, they're basically playing for 2026. Now, I don't know if that's 100% true. I agree that they're really not going to go anywhere with Aaron Rodgers being the starter of the team, but it would be interesting if Davante Adams was there, and I think that having Davante Adams actually opens up Malik Neighbors more for more touchdown catches because it's another direct threat in the wide receiver core, and maybe that takes the double teams or the triple teams off of Malik Neighbors because you actually have to worry about Davante Adams catching those passes. So we'll see how this one plays out, but the Jets had no choice. This was more money slashing than anything, and you're not gonna. And Davante Adams wouldn't have stayed there if Aaron Rodgers wasn't there. So it was all common sense that this had to be done. A positive story out of the NFL, not necessarily that Jimmy Johnson retires from Fox being positive, but 31-year career at Fox, incredible career being on the Fox pregame show for the NFL. He's won a couple Super Bowls. I think he won a national championship too, if I'm not mistaken. What didn't this guy accomplish?
Yeah, exactly. This guy was a great coach at the college level, and then at the pro and NFL level, and then went on to be one of the best football analysts that was out there. This guy was on Fox as long as I was watching football. I knew about him on Fox before I knew that he was a great coach because he was coaching before I was born. But when you look into what he accomplished, I know he kind of did dirty in Dallas by Jerry Jones. Because the ego and the power trip and who was more responsible for the dynasty. So it's unfortunate that Jimmy Johnson had to go to Miami. But I think Jimmy Johnson is one of the greatest coaches in NFL history. He proved that he could build up any team. He completely revolutionized how NFL teams view the draft and in terms of trading and putting value on an NFL trade draft value board and saying, hey, how much is the first round pick worth or a second round pick? He completely revolutionized that and then went to television and was phenomenal at that. So the guy's pretty much a Hall of Famer at everything he did. And he's been at it for a long time, had a long career, and he definitely deserves to enjoy retirement and probably on a golf course the rest of his life.
31 freaking years on the NFL on Fox. Like that, you don't see, and it's unfortunate in today's broadcasting and media game, you don't see guys or gals lasting in a broadcasting job for sometimes more than 1 to 2 years. Like they're always constantly moving media companies. Like there's no such thing as I stay at one company for my whole career and I want to build. It's not like an athlete where Derek Jeter was all 20 plus seasons was with the Yankees. You don't see that anymore. Like there's no tradition anymore in staying in a job. It's constantly the hamster wheel, whether it's media or an athlete. Okay, I got to find the next big job or the next big pay raise rather than trying to build a career in one place and build a reputation that way. So Jimmy Johnson, 31 years at Fox, that's just an incredible number, an incredible feat to be on a show. And by the way, and I've heard this a lot too, I felt like he was kind of the quarterback like on that set of that show. Even though, and I don't know why I'm forgetting the name off the top of my head, who was the lead guy that actually ran the pre-show for NFL on Fox? Do we remember or no?
Was it Gumbo?
No, that was CBS. I'm looking it up as we speak, but Kurt Menefee. Okay. Kurt Menefee, who I like, by the way. But I felt that Jimmy Johnson was always like getting everybody back into the fold, because there would just be times where Terry Bradshaw would just go on like a ridiculous heater of an opinion, and you're just like, all right, Terry, let's go, just finish it up. Or Howie Long would go off on whatever, and Strahan and Jimmy Johnson, you would just see him sitting there like turning the conversation back to common sense of what the topic was about. So I feel like that's going to be missing a little bit with him not being there. A lot of people are saying that they could get a current coach or ex-coach to fill that spot. What was the name I heard? Oh, just fired as the Dallas coach. Who is the Cowboys coach?
Oh, Mike McCarthy?
Yeah, they were saying McCarthy could be an option there because I think he said he's taking a year off and then he wants to get back in the next coaching cycle. And then obviously the name you're going to hear all the time is McVay. That was another name, but I don't think he's going anywhere. But incredible show. Well, I think it'll always be one of the best. And what's the word I was saying? Good luck in retirement for Jimmy Johnson. Like you said, I think he's going to play a lot of golf if he's still able to. And I could see him making appearances from time to time on shows. Just because you're retired doesn't mean you can show up from time to time if they have Super Bowl coverage in the future or whatever. So congrats on Jimmy Johnson retiring after 31 years. Empty the Bench is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience, from playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. And now back to the show. All right. Now it's time to see my head spin and explode. NBA injuries, a lot of NBA injuries. Now, if you're watching on the video side, the name that you see first has already been an issue with injuries, and that's Joel Embiid. And now add Kyrie Irving to the list. But we're going to break these two down separately. So if you didn't see my rants over the last week or two, I did a few live streams on Joel Embiid. And I don't know. What would you say? What was the number that he's sat more games out than he's actually played, I think, so far in his career? And supposedly he's made like $255 million already. Nothing to show for it. He's got one MVP, but in my opinion, he should have never won that MVP. That should have been 4 years in a row for Jokic, in my opinion. And the rules changed for MVPs and Defensive Player of the Years. They should just call it the Joel Embiid rule, because they basically said, oh, well, Joel Embiid sat out like 40-something games, and he won the MVP playing like 20, 25 games over Jokic, who played the full season. But the controversy then comes that the 76ers were trying to get him back on court through rehab still. And Joel Embiid had to go to ownership and say, sorry, out of luck. I have nothing left to give this season. They finally are looking into surgery again for Joel Embiid. So take your multiple choice here. Where do you start on this one with Joel Embiid?
Yeah, I mean, I guess predictable. I mean, we pretty much said that this was going to happen. And I said, they got nothing to play for. I mean, at this point, if they want, they would have to extremely play hard just to even make the last spot in the play-in tournament. And that doesn't even guarantee you anything. So at this point, I feel like they should have let Embiid have any surgery needs, let him sit out the rest of the season, let him rest up for the beginning of next season. You still got Tyrese Maxey. You'll still have Paul George and Jared McCann. Hopefully you can keep your head above water next year, just as a borderline, 7th or 8th seed. And then when Embiid comes back at the second half of the season, hopefully you can go on a playoff run. But, yeah, it's upsetting for 76ers. And I guess not only do you have to be on the 2025, but probably on the 2026 at this point.
Yeah, because it's going to take, 12 to 14 months if he has surgery on that knee. And this guy has been injured a lot. If I remember correctly, he had a facial bone injury, I think, earlier in his career, and he had to wear the mask. So he's been injured a lot. But I'm frustrated because everyone says, like, oh, he's one of the best in the NBA. He hasn't been on the court enough for anyone to say he's one of the best in the NBA. I would take Jokic. I would take Giannis. I would take those two before I ever took Joel Embiid. I mean, would you take Joel Embiid instead of those two?
Oh, definitely not. And I think obviously when you look back at the last, 5 or 7 years, yeah, Embiid has been one of the best players in the NBA. But like you said, he can't stay on the court. There was a small period of time where he was able to manage, 50 to 60 games or so for a few years in a row. And we saw him get real close with that Toronto Raptors series in the playoffs a couple years ago where Kawhi Leonard hit the game-winning shot. And it sucks because when Joel Embiid was healthy and dominating the playoffs, he had nobody around him, and he had Ben Simmons constantly letting him down. Now, when he's finally got a guy like Tyrese Maxey, and all these other players around him, now Embiid can't stay healthy for anything. So it's definitely unfortunate. And, like I said, when he's on the court, he's probably one of the 50 best players this game has ever seen. But like you said, Nick, how can you really say he's one of the best players if he's never on the court?
And his attitude and ego are also a problem. He's been in trouble before. I also thought it was funny before when you were saying like Paul George is worried about a playoff run. And then he's like, "Oh, I'll put my podcast P on hold because I'm playing for a championship this year." Hey, Paul, what are you smoking right now? Like, what? I want to know what you're smoking because you're like 20-39 or 20-40 something right now. And if they would have to win every game the rest of this year to have any chance of a playoff. And I'm looking it up just because I don't remember off the top of my head. Okay, here it is. They are 21-39.
How many games are they out of the last playing spot, the 10th seed?
So they're actually tied with the Brooklyn Nets for the 11th spot. And they're 3.5 out behind the Bulls.
Possibility.
Right, but Joel Embiid's going to be gone for the rest of the year. You can't expect Paul George to be himself every game he's out there. Tyrese Maxey is hit or miss if he's injured. Who's that young? What is it? McCann or McCain? I can't pronounce his name.
Jared McCann.
Yeah, he's a really good up-and-coming prospect, but he got hurt too. So I don't know what they have left on this team to make a run. And I was saying this to someone the other day. If I give you the top 6 seeds in the Eastern Conference, would the 76ers beat any of them? So, number 1 seed, the Cavs. They're not beating the Cavs. They're not beating the Celtics, who are the 2 seed. The Knicks, I could see the 76ers accidentally winning a game against the Knicks, but the Knicks should win. The Bucks at the 4 seed, they're not beating them.
They're not beating the Pacers.
They're not beating the Pacers. The Pistons are probably the first one you would have to think about at the 6th seed, but I wouldn't say that the Pistons are going to roll over by any means. The Pistons have actually played really good ball this year. So I would give the Pistons maybe even a little bit leg up against the 76ers. But the 76ers season is over. It's been over. And this is just the cherry on top to how bad the trust the process has really worked in Philadelphia. You want to feel bad for fans, and we could talk about the Mavs until we're blue in the face because of Luka being traded and Kyrie, which we'll get to in a minute. But I think you got to feel bad for Sixers fans because for the last 7 or 8 years, Josh Harris, who just bought the Commanders, owns the Devils. We get it. He's got a lot of money and spent a lot of money on the Sixers. And right now it's biting him in the ass right now. So I said it on the stream. I'll say it here. I think you got to cut your losses at some point and see if you can get a medical retirement at a Joel Embiid. Because there's no way he's ever going to be that guy ever again. I mean, the guy's going to make like $60+ million a year for the next 3 to 4 years. That is highway robbery, if you ask me. Like, what do you do in this scenario?
I don't think there's nothing you can do. I think you're just going to have to let the contract ride out and just hope for the best. And just whatever you do, don't give him a contract extension after that. Because at this point, no one's going to trade for that deal. And he's not going to obviously give up on that money and retire. So I think they're pretty much locked into that for the remaining of the years.
Well, they actually did give him a contract extension on the end of a deal. That's why they're in this situation. I'm going to give you a number that is insane. Next 5 years, they owe Joel Embiid $300 million. Think about that. $300 million. This guy is a shell of himself now. He's not the supposed MVP, which he never should have won. Can you imagine having to pay this guy in upwards of $70 to $80 million a year over 5 years each?
So if he plays his typical 20 to 40 games a year, you're paying Embiid about $2 million a game.
That's insane. This guy doesn't deserve this. And he's already made $255 million. Paul George has made over $320 million. And he's been injured like heck ever since he was with the Pacers. Even though I don't blame the injury when he was with the Pacers. I think that was just an unfortunate injury he had when he was in Indiana. I think he landed on the stanchion, I think, during the Olympics. I think is when he got hurt. But I don't know. The 76ers are awful. And I don't know. I don't see how they fix this in the next couple of years because they're plagued by their cap. So let's see what happens with them. But now let's get to the other elephant in the room, and that's the Dallas Mavericks and Kyrie Irving. I think this is just bad luck. Everything else has been self-inflicted wounds, as they say. Trading Luka, all their injuries that they have. But did you see the injury to Kyrie when it happened or no?
Yeah, it was devastating, and he toughed it out. He did the Kobe and Mamba mentality. He went right to the got carried right to the free throw line, sunk both his free throws, and then went to the locker room. And we later found out he had a torn ACL. And I mean, it's definitely devastating. I mean, for a guy in Kyrie Irving who at one point in his career was considered as a guy who's not available and a guy that doesn't play every game, has really been playing his heart out and been very committed and very available the last 2 years. And he really had found a home in Dallas. And pretty much, after trading Luka and with AD getting hurt, which, was predictable because he's injury prone, Kyrie was the only silver lining and the only thing that you actually could be happy about and hang your head on as a Mavs fan. To now see this guy get hurt and with his style of play being so quick and being, all about dribbling and athleticism, I know he can shoot. But now when you look at it, he's going to be 33 years old coming off of a torn ACL. He'll still have a shot, and I still think he'll be able to contribute. But will we be able to see prime Kyrie? Will this injury be the end to prime Kyrie? And I mean, if it is, that's absolutely devastating for Mavs fans after already losing Luka and already having an injury-prone Anthony Davis.
At least Kyrie has a title to show for his efforts. And he hit the game-winning shot alongside LeBron in Cleveland. So at least he has a title to show for it. Between these two guys, like I said, Joel Embiid has nothing to show for his career. Kyrie Irving has made quite a few playoff runs. He's won a title. So I would say Kyrie Irving's career is far more successful than Joel Embiid's will ever be. But there's so many issues with Dallas. I mean, I don't know if you saw this story. We were discussing this beforehand, but did you see that the Mavericks raised their season ticket prices almost 9%? Are you kidding me? Like, really? Like, I'm stunned. You trade Luka. You're now hurt with Kyrie. Now, let me be fair. They obviously didn't know that the Kyrie Irving injury was going to happen. That's all happenstance and chance. But you raise your ticket prices 9% for season tickets after you trade Luka. That's your franchise guy that you traded. What do you make of the season ticket prices going up 9%?
Yeah, that segues us right to around the NBA with the Mavs are raising their ticket prices, and I understand NBA is gaining popularity, and I mean it's common. I mean I see my Buffalo Bills always raising their ticket price, and I mean I know most teams are with the increase in popularity in the NBA and football. But if there's one year to not do it, it's definitely this year. After trading your franchise player, how the hell can you justify raising your season tickets and asking your fans like, hey, we just traded the only hope that you guys have for a championship. We're going to be a dumpster fire for the next few years, but how about you guys pay more money for our season tickets? I mean, it absolutely doesn't make sense. And I mean, even if they had to raise their season tickets, they at least should have tried to delay it at least a season or two.
I love, and I was reading this article, this ESPN article to you before we started, because they use these sentences to try to distract you away from the actual task at hand that is the issue. And it says the Mavericks say that despite the price adjustment, full season ticket holders will continue to save 15% to 23% compared to projected secondary market prices. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Nothing. Okay, so you're trying to tell me that like we raised them in the short term, but in the long term, if you keep staying with your tickets, you're eventually going to get a bigger discount. Who cares? That means nothing to me. To be honest, you're going to get season ticket holders calling up and saying, "You traded Luka, Kyrie's now hurt. 80% of the team is on the injured list. Can I have my money back? Please, I'm begging you. I'll go invest in the Dallas Stars or another or in one of the Texas baseball teams. I'm not going to put it into the Mavs. It's not worth it." I don't crazy. Like I don't know. You understand what I mean? Like where they're putting in those dumb sentences to distract you, right?
Yeah, they're always trying to find a way to make it sound better than what it actually is, and try to sell hope to a fan base. But there's no selling hope to a fan base when you took all the hope that you had, sent it to the Los Angeles Lakers. So for the Dallas Mavericks fans, I mean, right now I can't think of a fan base in any sport that may have it tougher than them. Also around the NBA, the Cleveland Cavaliers have been continuing their dominance. I mean, they had two huge comeback wins. They did be able to beat Boston. Now, it seems like the Boston Celtics had their number. But with the addition of DeAndre Hunter and how great he played, the Cavs were able to have a great fourth quarter comeback. And also led by Mitchell, they were able to beat the Celtics. And then without Mitchell, going up against kind of a streaky Portland team who over the last 10 games has been one of the 10 or 12 best teams in the NBA. They're like 5-5 or 6-4, and a lot of the young players that flourished. Now, Donovan Mitchell did not play in that game, and it looks like it was just going to be one of those nights where it wasn't the Cavs' night. But then you had guys like Ty Jerome and Max Strus and DeAndre Hunter who went off again. And it just goes to show you how deep this Cleveland Cavaliers team is to have back-to-back comeback wins. And even when they have an off night or even when one of their stars are out or aren't playing well, this team has the depth to contribute. This team could go 6 or 7 deep with players that could win a game any given night. And that's why they've had three 10-game winning streaks this season. Also, the Los Angeles Lakers now moved up to the second seed in the West. LeBron James has been playing at an MVP level. I'm not sure if you saw this, but since he's turned the age of 40, his stats are basically identical to his MVP season he had in the Miami Heat. I mean, that's absolutely unbelievable. The guy's almost scoring 30 and getting like 6 or 7 assists and 6 or 7 rebounds every night, and he's playing defense. I know LeBron as the age played less and less defense, but over the last second half of the season, he's been playing unbelievable defense. And now you add Luka, the Lakers are looking like one of the most dangerous teams in the NBA. And that's why LeBron won the Western Conference Player of the Month.
Yeah, LeBron is in rarefied air, is the way I would put it, where the guy's 40 years old and he runs around like he's 30. Like he's in the because he probably is in the best shape of his life. Now let's be transparent that he gets injured quite a bit now, but it makes sense. The guy's 40 years old. There's so much mileage, excuse me, on this guy's legs between the regular season, the playoffs. I think if I'm not mistaken, as of this recording, I don't know if they played tonight. for the
He's about to
recording.
have 50,000 career points, which is the
Yes.
most ever be playoff and regular season combined.
Even though I think that stat is a little ridiculous, to be quite honest, because it should either be all-time regular season points, which he already is the leader. I feel like you can't combine regular season and playoff points. I think that's just something the NBA made up so they could market 50,000 points. But it's still an incredible feat because it means he's played many years in the NBA. That also tells you that he's been on the long journey. But the Lakers are going to be tough. Now, do I really think they have a chance to win a title? I still think there are quite a few teams that are better than them, even on the Eastern Conference side, that I think are a little better.
So right now, Nick, let me ask you, where would you rank them in the West?
Let me look at the standings because I have them here.
I would probably say, I know they did beat them, but right now I would say only OKC and Denver were the only two teams I think could beat them in a 7-game series.
I wouldn't even trust OKC because they've been upset the past couple of years as a 1 seed of all things. So even though SGA is out of his mind, like, didn't he have 20 points in the first quarter of a game the other night? I mean,
yeah. Speaking of around the NBA, yeah, he just had a 50-point game the other night. I mean, he's probably going to win MVP or come real close second to Jokic between them two.
and what was the stat I saw also? Oh, 4 50-point games in the regular season. This guy is incredible. You want to talk about a guy who needs to be on the MVP discussion every single year? SGA has to be in the MVP discussion every single year. This guy, when he touches the ball, can do anything, whether it's shooting from range, dunking. He can do it all. So they're running away with this. I don't think they're going to be caught. They're up. So right now, technically, the Lakers and the Nuggets are tied for the 2 seed right now, and the Thunder have an 11-game lead. So they're not going to get caught. They're going to win the number 1 overall seed, and it's not going to be close. In theory, the Denver Nuggets should be better than the Lakers because their lineup has more star power in it, especially with Anthony Davis now gone. Whether that made a difference or not, I think it actually does. Denver is just a better team. They're really not playing like themselves, and that's what's throwing people off. Memphis is playing good, but with Jaren Jackson now being hurt and being week to week, that's a huge injury. I think he was the odds-on favorite for Defensive Player of the Year. And by the way, he's got a lot of range from the offensive side, which people forget and sleep on, by the way. Houston's good, but they're not going anywhere. Golden State, everyone is saying like Golden State is like this sneaky dark horse now with Jimmy Butler from the 6th seed. They might win a round, maybe, just because they're Golden State. But that's pretty much it because there's too many teams that are better than they are above.
So right now, yeah, you guys say the Lakers are probably the 3rd best team in the West.
Yeah, I would say OKC, Denver, and LA in that order. If Denver can come to its senses, they would definitely beat the Lakers. Not even a question. If Denver is going to struggle from time to time offensively, and that happened to them, that's why they almost lost the NBA Finals. Or I shouldn't say almost lost the NBA Finals. The games were a lot closer than the NBA Finals record showed. Then maybe the Lakers do have a chance to beat them. But like I said, OKC 1, Denver 2, Lakers 3, and then I would just throw the rest of the field away because no one else is going to win, in my opinion. So that's how I pretty much would look at that. All right, let's get into a few quick things before we wrap it up. You ready for it? You ready to do it?
Yeah, I can't. I'm glad that we're finally breaking down some college basketball. I mean, we're about when this show premieres, we're going to be about a week and a half away from Selection Sunday, and a lot of people would say football and Super Bowl included. March Madness is one of the best sporting events that there is. I mean, the first couple of days of March Madness, with all those crazy buzzer beaters we're going to get, it's going to be awesome. But obviously, it's going to all stem from this and where the teams rank. So obviously we had the latest edition of the college basketball rankings. We obviously had Auburn, who was at the top again. Auburn's been a really solid team who's led by Johnny Broome, who pretty much could do it all. He's one of the best defensive players in college basketball. The guy can rebound. The guy can score in the paint. I mean, he's going to be a problem. But the team that I think is the best team in college basketball is Duke. I think Duke is the team to beat. They got a lot of young players, but they got some older veterans as well, like Zion James, who contributes as well. But I think they got the best player in college basketball in Cooper Flag. The guy can score, the guy can pass, the guy can rebound. He can do it all. That's why he leads their team in all categories. And this team has a lot of great players that wall around him. You got Knappel, who's a great three-point shooter, who's probably going to end up being a top 10 pick. This team has probably like 7 or 8 NBA draft picks on him. So this, I think, is probably the best team in college basketball. A couple other teams, 2 teams that I want to mention is the third seed right now. The team that was ranked third is Houston. And then the team that was ranked fourth was Tennessee. Both those teams love to play defense, especially Houston. They love to smother teams. LJ Cryer is one of the best scorers in college basketball. For Tennessee, they got a huge win over Alabama. That was big for them. Chaz Lanier is a tremendous scorer, and Ziegler, the little 5'9" guard, can pass, defend, and shoot. So those 4 teams, I think it's going to come down to one of those 4. But right now, in my opinion, I think Duke's the best team in the country. What do you say, Nick?
So you know the rankings better. I have some questions about some stuff that I've been following. So I'm sure you saw Cooper Flag speak after the game. It was kind of funny watching him being asked if he's going to, as you hear them chanting, 1 more year, 1 more, which, by the way, that was probably the silliest thing I've ever seen. I get the fans want him back, and it would be cool, and it would be a cool story, but he's going to the NBA. It's not even a question. Like, he's 100% going to the NBA, right?
Oh, there's no question. I mean, he's pretty much the best prospect outside of Victor Wembanyama that come out in the last decade or so. So, I mean, I know he reclassified, and he actually should be a high school senior. I mean, the guy is born late 2006. He started off his college career at 17. So, hypothetically, age-wise, he can go back for another year. But he's so dominant in college, and him being able to be the guaranteed number 1 overall pick with all the endorsement deals he's going to get. Plus, a lot of people say, oh, NIL money. Well, it's not just about your first NBA contract. It's about your second NBA contract. And the faster you can get through that first NBA contract, the faster you get that second max deal contract as well. So Cooper Flag obviously has to go to the NBA. But as a college basketball fan and Duke fan, it would be great to see him play 1 more year, but it's not happening.
I mean, I've heard rumors that, like, this is Michael Jordan and LeBron James sized big, which is a lot of pressure on this young man. But he's had an incredible career at Duke. Like, this guy can dunk. He can block shots defensively. This guy is going to be crazy. And he's probably going to be, I mean, it's too early to say it in the first couple of years, but I could see in 2 to 3 years being in the NBA, like being a face of the NBA possibly, if he's as good as advertised, right?
Yeah, and what's also going to put added pressure on him, Nick, is I mentioned he's the best prospect besides Victor Wembanyama. But what is Victor Wembanyama? He's international. What is Cooper Flag? He's American. That's going to add added pressure because what does all the sports commentators say? Oh, the face of the NBA has to be an American. And I think because of the fact that this guy is an American-born player, I think that's going to put added more pressure on him. And like you said, that's going to put him in the conversation of the LeBron and Jordan, because it's usually not the international players that get the hype that they deserve. It's usually the American players that get the bigger endorsement deals when they first come in the league and get the more hype.
Now, I told you that how ridiculous I thought that argument was on First Take. If you have the props of an amazing game and you can be box office and you can be entertaining, it doesn't matter if you're from the U.S. or if you're born in some international country around the world, then you be the best player. It doesn't matter. Unfortunately, I think the stereotypical part of that stipulation or that conversation was when Anthony Edwards came out and told the media and said, I don't want to be the face of the NBA. And it left a bad taste in people's mouths for American basketball, unfortunately. Because, and Nick and I actually debated this on Moving the Goalpost. I said, I'm shocked that he didn't want to be the face of the NBA. That gets you more accolade, more attention, more marketing dollars, as you were talking about. So I don't understand why you wouldn't want to be the face of the NBA. Cooper Fleck has a lot of potential, but there's a lot of pressure. There's a boulder on this guy's back that he's going to have to carry to really get where he needs to get.
Plus, he was also on Team USA, right?
Yes, but he was like a bench guy. He was there more for the experience
but
factor.
Still get the added pressure because they're going to say, "Hey, why was he on there and not other players?" So that is another added pressure you got to factor in.
That's a good point. Another team I wanted to ask about, and it's more in the locale. St. John's being a 6 seed.
Yeah, Rick Pitino's got that team moving, and they play really gritty. That's another team that's definitely surprised a lot of people. But they look like a team we don't want to play. They're very well coached, and wherever program Rick Pitino goes to, he always has great success. Also, I want to mention real quickly, you got Bama and Kansas, who've been struggling a little bit. Bama and Kansas, I think, have been too reliant on one player. Mark Sears, they've been too reliant upon him for Alabama. A lot of his teammates haven't delivered. He's been doing a good job carrying. Kansas has been too reliant on Hunter Dickinson, and Hunter Dickinson has had his struggles. And one last thing I want to say is Florida was able to bounce back, beating Texas A&M after having a really bad loss to Georgia. So Florida was able to bounce back, and that's why they were able to be ranked so high.
Yeah, so I think Cooper Fleck is going to be a really good player. I'm excited to see what he looks like. Is Duke a favorite though, with him going to the tournament, or no?
Oh yeah, definitely Duke's up there. That's why they're right now ranked second. And like I said, they're not that far off from Auburn. I mean, those two teams are close. And I mean, besides their bad performance against Clemson by Duke, Duke's been absolutely blowing teams out. So it's definitely between those two. And right now, I would side with Duke because I think they're the deeper team that has more NBA talent.
Okay, and I even though like Anthony knows this, like I'm not the biggest college basketball, but I watch the tournament every year. I watch as many games as I possibly can because I like the format of the tournament. Just watching one-off games, it's fascinating to me in that regard to see good basketball and a lot of guys be put on a pedestal. One last story, and it has to do with Pete Rose, legend Pete Rose, who passed away last year. So it has now come out that MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred is considering reinstating Pete Rose for the Hall of Fame. And you're getting a lot of people who are coming out and saying, really? You waited until he passed away to reinstate him off the exempt list, and now he'd be eligible to go into the Hall of Fame. And don't get me wrong, let me be very clear, and I've stated this for quite a few years when his name has come up, that P. Rose is not exactly the most common sense human being to ever live. And I don't know how much you know about Pete Rose and his story, but Pete Rose was in gambling controversy, betting on games that he was in. And that led to him being banned from baseball because at the time, it's hard to believe, but many decades ago, gambling was frowned upon in sports. And I thought eventually maybe they would find a way to say, you know what? You're banned from baseball, but we'll find a way to put you in the damn Hall of Fame for your career. Over 4,200 career hits. It's not even close. He is by far the all-time hits leader in Major League Baseball history. And every commissioner that has followed since he's been in baseball has held the ban on him, not willing to look past anything. Now, technically, he was allowed to show up for the Cincinnati Reds Ring of Honor because that technically wasn't like a baseball event. That was like a local thing that they did. But put him in the Hall of Fame, please. Like, and I get it. I totally understand it. He broke the rules at the time. Gambling was frowned upon. And by the way, I find it hypocritical now that they were never willing to look at the ban and say, we're in bed with the gambling companies now, but no, we're gonna keep that permanent ban on Pete Rose and not give it a look. So what do you make? Or what are your thoughts kind of from an outsider's perspective looking at this from a baseball perspective?
Yeah, I kind of think it's a little too late. I feel like they should have did this a long time ago when the man was still alive, so that he could at least be able to visual and be able to see himself in the Hall of Fame. I mean, yeah, whether he's a bad person or whether he made mistakes, it's not about that. I mean, at the end of the day, he was a Hall of Fame level player, and I know the MLB is the hardest Hall of Fame to get in. They're the most strictest, and I know people talk about that all the time. That it's way harder to make their Hall of Fame than it is so the NFL or the NBA or others. But at the end of the day, Pete Rose is one of the greatest players to ever play the game. And if you're a Hall of Fame level player at the level he is, I mean, he should have been in the Hall of Fame a long time ago, in my opinion.
I mean, listen to some of these numbers. 3-time World Series champion, 17-time All-Star, 1973 NL MVP, 1963 NL Rookie of the Year. He's got all the accolades that a player would need to get in. Like I said, 4,200 hits, first and only one, in my opinion, that will ever have 4,000 hits in Major League Baseball. Because, first of all, you have to have a 23, 24, 25 season long career to get to that type of hits. That's a hard achievement to get to. That's why you're never going to see, at least in our lifetimes again, a 3,000 hit career, a 500 home run career hitter, a 300 win pitcher, because it's so hard with the way the rules are in Major League Baseball to accomplish those feats. And by the way, I agree with you also that MLB is one of the toughest. It is the toughest Hall of Fame to get into because the voting process is one of the strictest out there. And the joke about the NBA is that basically everybody gets into the Hall of Fame for the NBA because there's like really no rules whatsoever. NFL, there is some rules, but eventually you could get in even if you're a bad guy, except for T.O., apparently, who they hate a bunch. And I'll never understand that one either. I think T.O. should be in the Hall of Fame.
No, I think he recently got in.
Oh, did he get in?
Yes.
But the bias for many years, like it's almost like the NFL Hall of Fame committee just like hated T.O. because of his antics and his off the field. And I would say the NFL Hall of Fame voting is more controlled, if you know what I mean. They can pretty much control who gets in and who doesn't. But same thing for Major League Baseball. They can control who they want, who's a steroid user, who cheated, who did this. You don't really hear about morality in the NFL when it comes to Hall of Fame voting. So, I don't know. Does it matter now? I'll ask you, does it really matter if Rob Manfred comes out and says, all right, here's my PR statement. We've decided to officially remove the permanent ban from Pete Rose, and now we're going to put him on the ballot to be voted for the Hall of Fame. Your initial thought is what if that statement comes out?
Well, I would say is would it be better if they had done it sooner when Pete Rose was still alive? Yes, definitely. That would have definitely been much better if they could have did this when he was alive. Does it still matter? Yes, I definitely think so. I mean, if you can still reinstate him and be able to put his name in the Hall of Fame, I mean, then his name will still be able to live on forever. I mean, it's still for his family to be able to go see. I mean, and just for future generations. I mean, obviously, 100 years from now, no one's going to remember what he did or what exactly happened. But anybody who goes to the MLB Hall of Fame will be able to see his name, and his name will be able to be there forever. So technically, his name will never die out. So I think they should be able to reinstate him, and I think they should put him in the Hall of Fame. And I think it does matter because, like I said, then his name can live on forever.
I agree with you. And also what's ironic, and they do this in all Hall of Fames, and I'll wrap this up because we're a little bit over. But MLB's Cooperstown holds on to most of the memorabilia that breaks the all-time records. If I'm not mistaken, and I can't remember off the top of my head, they have Pete Rose's equipment, whether it's the jersey or the bat that broke the all-time hits record. So it seems kind of moronic if you ask me. Oh, I have Pete Rose's memorabilia from when he broke the hits record. But nah, he gambled. He did this. And we're not going to put him in. Now, he's done some pretty horrible things on the side. He's had charges for alleged sexual assault issues and stuff. I'm putting that aside for a second because that is bad. No doubt. I'm just talking about the story in hand, which is, will Commissioner Manfred reinstate him for the Hall of Fame? Should they? Yes. Is it far too late? Yes. They missed that boat, knowing that he was sick, he was facing cancer. They should have just gave in and just let him be in the Hall of Fame. He will always be the greatest, well, one of the greatest, if not the greatest, to ever play Major League Baseball. Because like I said, no one's getting 4,000 hits ever again in our lifetimes. So if Commissioner Manfred can figure it out, please do it. And I think it's worse if they go through all this and then they just say, oh, well, we're not going to reinstate him. I think that's worse too, right?
Oh, yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, if they're going to say all this and still not do it, I mean, yeah, it's definitely worse. I think at this point they have no choice. But I think they'll do the right thing.
I hope they do the right thing. Because again, I loved baseball growing up as a kid. That was the first sport I watched. And because I got so in tune with all the guys that played. That's what baseball was. Baseball was like a personal sport, a localized sport. So you got to know all the legends when they would come to your local stadium and see them. But I now look at baseball as like 3 on my list. Like I'm watching NBA, well, yeah, NBA, NFL, and then Major League Baseball at best because they just don't handle the sport as well as they used to. So that'll do it for this episode. A little bit over this week, but we had a lot of good topics this week, so I think it was well worth going a little bit over. Make sure you follow us on social media, Empty the Bench at ETB Sports, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Follow the Empty the Bench Podcast Network at ETB Network, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at ETB Network. Follow our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ETB Network. Please like and subscribe. It helps. It helps grow our algorithm and helps us do more things. We have some plans in the work as well. Some NFL free agency streams coming up. Selection Sunday streams coming up. So just if you subscribe, it helps us grow and we can do some more things. Listen wherever you get your podcasts as well. So if you can't watch the video, take us on a jog, take us in the car. You have a long road trip. I promise you, we will entertain you. Even if our heads explode, it's worth it. Check out our ETB Network Substack, etbnetwork.substack.com, for all our bonus short video series, including us doing alley-oop analytics, which, full disclosure, we will be recording when we're done with this. And I promise you it is a good one, so make sure you stay tuned for that on Thursday. And like I said, all the other ones, we have gambling stuff, we have baseball, we have all different other things. So make sure you check that out as well. And finally, Empty the Bench is presented by Playback. We have stream schedule that we're working towards when we find out more, including baseball, which is coming soon. So make sure you check that out as well. Whew. Okay. I think I got through everything. Anthony, is there anything else you want to add before we head out of here, or no?
Yeah, I just want to say we got a huge UFC card. I'm a huge Alex Pereira fan, so Shama.
I now know what that means now that I've heard it many times. So for Anthony Balester, I'm Nick Morgasen. We will see you next week for a nice round number 270 of Empty the Bench. We will see you next week. Have a good day, everybody.